Today's episode is brought to you by DeSanto Propane. DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane. Today we continue our series previewing local elections across the Finger Lakes by catching up with one of the candidates running for mayor in Geneva. Incumbent Steve Valentino joins me in studio. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Josh, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I really like your studio.
So easy question first, why are you running?
I'm running because I think it's important to continue with the momentum that Geneva has made in the last 20 years, and I think it's critical time. You know, we're never over the hill. We really need to kind of keep focusing. We might be at the top of the hill, but you can either go down really fast or you can continue to go up. So,
when you look back at your first term, what do you consider to be a couple of the big successes that stand out in your mind now?
Big successes. That's an important question because the first 2 years were definitely a struggle for this council and for myself. And I think the challenge was just getting through COVID was kind of a number one success. And working with staff, the city manager, Sage Gerling and Adam, to make sure that we didn't have issues financially throughout that term. And I think that was critical. And then once we got beyond that kind of 2-year COVID, social unrest, police reform, we were able to kind of turn the page and focus on finishing the DRI. And really the DRI, completing that was important. There's still some loose ends to tie up, but the majority of it is complete. So I think those are kind of the two big things, is getting through COVID and completing the DRI.
Does it feel like an eternity has passed since the 2-year COVID window? Because it does seem like it's been a very long time, but it hasn't been that long, really.
No, and it kind of still lingers. In different atmospheres, it still lingers. I work for Thermo Fisher Scientific, so we provide product to the marketplace that fights COVID and fights other types of diseases like that. So we see things change, and as you look in the rearview mirror, there's also things coming at you in the front window. Mm-hmm. So, the overall experience in the 3.5 years as mayor is not what I expected. It's been a challenge. It's been an excellent learning experience for me, and I think I can leverage that learning experience in the next term.
Any lingering concerns from COVID related to just function of the city moving forward?
No, I think we've done a good job of not just getting through it, but planning ahead in the future and how we're going to deal with things. I can't thank staff enough for the way they actually made sure that the basic important priorities of the city continued throughout that. When you talk about water, you talk about sewer, you talk about just being able to keep things moving in the city of Geneva. I think one of the biggest challenges was how small businesses were hurt, and I think that's something in the future we've got to make sure we protect against.
Two-parter here. City Council has received a fair amount of criticism over the last 3-4 years for it being quote-unquote dysfunctional. Would you do anything different in a second term than you did in the first term to perhaps keep the ship more on the rails? And also, what's your message to voters who just want to see a more functional city council over the next 4 years?
Good two-part question, because the first part of it, would I do anything different? I learned through all the dysfunctional activities that took place in the first 2 years, and it was very emotionally charged. And there was people that were very focused on specific issues, and I'm being cautious in my wording right now because you got to be able to listen to your constituents, and that's extremely important. So finding the balance between listening to constituents, because some people felt that I could have had a stronger leadership role, and some people felt that I had too strong of a leadership role. So to try to find that happy middle ground somewhere in between, to make sure that I was listening to constituents and giving councilors the opportunity to view their to voice their opinions was important. But, to change anything, I had to change as it was going along. I had to find ways to try to mitigate certain situations. And I think one of the biggest things that I could have done differently was really more staff-based, was to try to protect staff more, because staff got caught in the middle of a lot of turmoil. Staff got redirected, and we lost ground as far as morale. And we saw 2 key people leave the city of Geneva because of that, and a variety of other people retire because they had just had enough. So I think what I would have done differently was really to try to protect staff more and to be able to build some kind of a barrier buffer between council and staff. I think that would have been important. You can't control council in many ways. We have rules of order procedure. They can ignore them. They're not legal. You have to put laws into place if you want to control council more. A councilor or a mayor, once they get elected, there's no way to get rid of that councilor or mayor. They're in for the 4-year term, and that's just a fact. They either have to violate their oath of office, or they have to move out of the area that they're being elected in. So those are the only two ways. And unfortunately, some councilors took leverage on that and abused that opportunity. The second part of the question, if you'll remind me, please.
For the people who just want to see a more functional city council over the next 4 years, a city council that gets things done, because at the end of the day, that's what you're graded on. What is your message to them?
So you're going to make me smile there, because it is important. I think that's one of the key issues we talk about as we're moving forward in this campaign, in this election season. For us, for me, I think the opportunity is to take a look at each candidate, because if you really want a council that functions effectively, you got to take a look at the last 4 years and reel the tapes back, reel back 20 years. When I got on council in 1996, there was very important things that took place, but there was a lot of disagreement on council. But those disagreements were settled on the council floor, not emotionally. People spoke their viewpoints and moved on to a vote. And whether you win or lost that vote, you moved on to the next issue. This council did not do that. In the first 2 years, there was a major distractions. So I tell people who just want civility on council, who want a council that moves things forward, is just to take a look at what caused the dysfunction in the first 2 years and make sure you understand who your candidates are. So you put the right people in place that will work together. Even if they disagree, they will still continue to work together for the betterment of Geneva.
How do you approach that mentally, not knowing, and from a philosophical standpoint, I guess, preparing for whatever city council, if you're elected, whatever city council may look like next year, because you just don't know?
I learned a lesson a long time ago. It was not to worry about the people or the personalities that you were working with, is to put the issues forward. So really having those issues in front of you to focus on, and then focusing on the rules of order procedure and having a strong staff that gives direction to council. Council is there to provide support for staff, to have key staff in place to support that key staff, and to be able to give them the tools to be successful and create policies that allow them to be successful. So, when we talk about how you be successful as a council, there's some key factors there, but council doesn't run the city. Council, it's a city manager form of government. You need to have the key people in place with the right tools to make that work.
And you do feel like the city is in a good place now with its staff?
Yeah, I do. I'm very happy with where we are. I'm disappointed we lost some key people along the way, but I'm very happy that we rebuilt and we're where we need to be. We're moving forward. I think, I'll say this over and over again. When people come to the city of Geneva and they see how the renaissance of the city of Geneva and how things have changed, it's just a positive. And I continue to have those positives. One of the key ones was Jim and Kevin at Vinifera. I think that was so cool that they made the Wine Enthusiast magazine. Those kind of activities don't happen by accident. They're actions that take place with public and private investment. And I think, we need more of them. I reached out to Geneva on the Lake. I went out there recently, and I thought that was pretty cool. Amanda and Naved have really done a great job at remodeling and rebuilding that whole atmosphere at Geneva on the Lake. Those are the key things that make Geneva noticed, not just in the region, but nationally and even globally.
And speaking of that, obviously, environmental issues, a big issue. You've got 2 landfills on each side of the city, a lake that's becoming saltier, HABs on Seneca Lake all the time, every summer, every fall. When you think about the environmental issues, how would you like to see your second term go in terms of approaching these environmental issues so that the city's greatest resource, Seneca Lake, is at top health?
Yeah, it truly is our gem, and we have to do everything we can to protect. We sit in a small portion of the lake, but we have to do everything we can to reach out to all the residents and the communities around us to show that importance. I think the disaster that we look at when you stand on the highest points in Geneva, and you can look to the east and look to the west and see these mountains that are not good for our community. and the continued growth of those mountains, we have to strongly voice our opinion that we don't want to see that. I kind of look to Europe and what Europe has done throughout their hundreds and hundreds of years and how they're dealing with environmental issues like that. We need to leverage experience that we take care of our environment better. We've done a great job, and I will compliment Councilor Camera. We've gone against the ethanol plant that was going to be on the other side of the lake. We've gone against the gas storage that was going to be south of the lake. We've continually agreed. Our council agreed many times on environmental issues and making strong statements about landfills. So I think we've done the right things. I think we've got to continue to do more of that and continue to strongly voice our opinion about that.
Economic development. What does, in a perfect world, what does your vision of economic development look like in the city as far as an approach over the next 4 years if elected?
Let me just reel back a little bit on previous years, because in my first term on council in 1996, we actually landed Guardian Glass. It was the largest development in New York State in 20 years, which was huge. So you bring in 300 or 400 employees, you bring in a great facility like that, and then you learn how to retain other businesses like Zoto/Henkel. Those were key things to kind of keeping the growth in the city of Geneva. You go back even further, and the loss of American Can and the Army Depot, you saw that's where our population dropped, and investment in Geneva kind of took a south turn. That renaissance has started to take place in the late 90s, and it continues to take place. So for me, economic development, we've decided, we are a niche market. When we talk about food safety, when we talk about craft breweries and different kind of winery locations and being a tourist destination, I think that's key. So we need to continue to leverage our opportunities there. We also, we put a hotel on the lake, and next thing you know, we had 2 more hotels within the city limits and 2 more hotels just on the outskirts of the city limits. So, that economic development opportunity, I think, continues to grow because of the excitement with tourism. I also think there's a great opportunity working with Cornell, the Ag Tech Park. There's fiber optics there. We've put in, there's investments that have been there that really need to be leveraged and expanded upon. We talk about microchip technology. We talk about food safety. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, that we can leverage in that Ag Tech Park that can grow us to have some really good paying jobs focused on what's going to happen in the future that's going to help the nation in many ways to be able to keep developing. Economic development also has a component. Once you have that catalyst, that you have the right people, private and public investments taking place, and you have those job opportunities, then you have the opportunity to expand when you talk about income levels in the city of Geneva, and you get the opportunity to work on housing and neighborhoods. So it all ties together.
Obviously, Geneva has a great lakefront. That's another gem, I would say, for the city in terms of tourism and economic development. Anything additionally that you'd like to see there in terms of continued progress or something that isn't on the table currently?
Yeah, we've had a 7-phase lakefront plan, and we're through phase 5. And I think the critical part there is, there was a lot of resistance on what you do with the lakefront, and leaving a lot of green space is extremely important. People love walking on our lakefront. They love the beauty of our lakefront. Our Welcome Center was going to be a boat museum. We were smart when we made the decision not to do that because it was a negative $250,000 a year burden on the taxpayers. So by being conscious about that and moving it into a visitor center to start with, and then having the state come in and turning it into one of the most beautiful welcome centers. If you look at that mosaic floor, it's just gorgeous. And then going all the way across the hotel, the shade structures, the Adirondack chairs, it's really cool. So I think the next step would be the marina. I think that's important. Some people might be against the marina, but marina is an economic catalyst. And if you talk to the business owners in the downtown and you talk to entrepreneurs in the area, they will tell you that if you put a marina in there, it will be successful. And you can talk about capacity at other marinas. You can talk about the other challenges. But if you have a marina on your lakefront, right next to your downtown, it's a great connection to the two. I think the biggest challenge is creating more access to the water. We've talked about beaches. We've talked about pools. Pools are seasonal. Beach access is really critical, especially at the north end of the lake with the waves and the challenges we might have with putting a beach in. There's a little secluded beach that people use, and it's not well known, but if you go down there in the morning, it's really cool watching the sunrise and seeing that area. So How you create beach access is still a big question mark, but I think how you create the opportunity for somebody to enjoy the water in the lake is another one. If you go down to Seneca Lake State Park, that beach is not being used. They have the spray park, so we're very limited in getting people into the water.
Do you think that DRI efforts along 5 and 20 were effective to connect downtown to the lakefront a little more effectively? Maybe not perfectly, but a little better than it was. And what opportunities do you think still exist to maybe make that access a little less chaotic when it comes to traffic, especially?
Yeah, I think it's been beneficial. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about the road diet and the 2 lanes and the traffic. And, people can go back and forth about that. But I think it did what we tried to drive it to do, is slow things down and give people the opportunity to be able to cross a little bit better. Back when I was growing up, we had the overbridge, and that was really cool, but it's not economically viable at this time. I think there's an opportunity with our tunnel to be able to advertise the tunnel more, to make the tunnel more appealing, and give us a footpath or bike path that would take you back and forth between downtown and the lake. And I also think there's opportunities with the backs of the buildings and the OEO site to be able to create more of attraction. When people are coming from the lakefront, in maybe visual directions. When people come from the lakefront, they walk to the corner of Exchange Street and they're looking left and right, or they're looking at their phones, they're looking for opportunities. So if we give them better direction, better visual direction when they come across into the lakefront on what's available in our downtown and in our city, I think we'd be much more successful with drawing that attention.
So let's talk a little bit about taxes and infrastructure, because I think that's an important one here. Flooding obviously made headlines this summer in the city for certain city residents, certain neighborhoods. Residents were frustrated by it. How do you balance the reality that obviously things need to be done, but that those things are probably going to be expensive long term if they're really going to fix some of these problems? How do you approach that? How do you walk that line? And then what do you think the best course of action will inevitably be for the city to fix some of those issues so they aren't annual problems? Every summer when we get heavy thunderstorms, neighborhoods are flooding and basements are flooding.
Yeah, I started looking internally thinking, wow, we really have a mess. What did we do wrong? What gaps do we have in our infrastructure and our systems? And, I thought it was isolated to us. And it was interesting as you watch the news every night, it was like, wow, this is happening all over. And it's happening way worse in other areas. So, there is a phenomena happening with water and rainfall, not just in the city of Geneva. So I'm going to compliment staff here because they took this seriously. And I've spent some time with the DPW department, and they've really done a great mapping opportunity of our infrastructure and where our deficiencies are. And they found some issues, and they've cleared some of those issues. And some of the things that we've done in the past, as we've done zoning and development, and north of us, actually west of us, west, north, the surrounding areas, everywhere about the lake and the town, they've implemented water retention mandatory systems, which is important. And I don't know if everybody remembers when the county redid 5 and 20 preemption. When the county redid Preemption Road, they actually had to redo a portion of it because of the water flow and the water retention. So I think, attention has been paid to how to reduce the drift of water coming naturally downhill into the city of Geneva. But there's a lot more to be done. And the city of Geneva cannot do it on its own. It's going to need state and federal support. And I think we're going to get that support from our senators and our congressmen and our assemblymen to be able to leverage some of the funds to be able to improve you're not going to flip a switch. There's no magic wand. It's going to take time, but we're going to be able to make a big difference, I think, over a period of time.
This is a years and years long effort, right?
Definitely.
Housing. Whether it's median stock availability, rent prices, senior housing access, all three are issues. The county has obviously made housing a priority moving forward, especially with the report that was just released last month. What role would you like to see the city have when it comes to housing issues, not just in the city, but across the entire county? Because obviously there's a bit of an east-west divide in there, and some folks on the east side don't feel quite as well represented. What would you like to see happen so that housing can be a priority and some of these issues could potentially be addressed over the next, say, 4 to 8 years?
Yeah, I think the biggest priority there is working with our county supervisors, the 3 county supervisors in Geneva, because I was fortunate. I attended one of the sessions, and I learned a lot. I learned what the survey provided us. And there's a strong focus not only on seniors now, but seniors in the next 10, 20, and 30 years. It's going to be a huge issue. And when we look at Geneva itself, I have an aging mother and an aging mother-in-law. And, to get into Lyceum or to get into a senior home, the waiting list is just almost unreal. You're waiting 2, 3, 4 years, and you have hopes, and then you have limitations on income. It's just a major challenge. So I think what the county has done with the survey and what needs to be the number one focus is to make sure we take care of our seniors, to make sure we have the proper living spaces and the opportunities for them to not be on waiting lists, to have the opportunities to move into safe, affordable residences, to be able to retain their residents in the area, which I think is huge for us because, if it wasn't for the aging population that built us and brought us to where we are today, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be in the situation we are in. I'm very fortunate to say that I'm glad I still have my mother. The other thing I think with the county, and you talk about the east and west divide, there are challenges there. And I think, some of the development, I think the challenges with the overall housing situation is some of the challenges is developers and the developers' investments. Developers aren't stupid and they don't want to go out of business. So they want to do developments to create some level of return on their investment. And the developments that have taken place more in the west part of the county have been targeted at the top 10% of the income level, which makes sense for that developer to be able to recoup their investment and actually make money off it. We've got to kind of turn that around a little bit and make it a little bit differently. And I think in order to make that happen, specifically in the city of Geneva, we have 2 tracks that I think are really important that are paper roads, but no developer is going to come in and put housing there without infrastructure. So again, I'm going to go back to the infrastructure comment with state and federal help, and I've talked to Senator Helmy, I've talked to Assemblyman Gallahan, and I've talked to Senator Schumer, that we need support, federal and state support, to be able to come in and put that infrastructure in place. If the infrastructure is there, we will get developers that will come in and put housing in those areas.
And to that end, you mentioned the aging population. We saw the report in September that said by 2040, 65 plus population across the Finger Lakes is going to increase by like 40%, while all other age groups under the 65 mark are going to be declining between 7 and 14%, or will have declined at that point by that much. How much of a concern is that to you from a tax base standpoint, and also from an operational standpoint when you think about running a city like Geneva?
Yeah, I'm going to fall in that category very shortly, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Josh. And, I think what's important to me is looking at both ends of the spectrum. So I think it's important to look at how we're going to deal with the seniors. And right now, I think we have to look at the tax rate and based on seniors and how to be able to relieve that somehow. I think it's important for us to reduce some of the pain, and create the retention in the seniors so they don't all go south. The other part is we've got to take a look at that 7 to 14% in the lower end of the scale, the younger end of the scale. I think that's important because we want younger people to be attracted to the city of Geneva. And I actually think we've done some of that with some of the, you look at the Solar Village, that's very attractive. I think that type of housing, some people don't like it, but I love it because I think that type of housing that's sustainable, that's off the grid, is going to be very attractive to younger generations. And being a tourist destination, being a college town, I see a lot of people from Hobart William Smith that love to stick around the city of Geneva and they like what they see when they get here, and creating that micro opportunity maybe with the Ag Tech Park, as I mentioned earlier, to create those type of jobs that bring that younger generation and want them to be in a beautiful part of the country. I ignored how beautiful the city of Geneva was until I came home from the service in 1981, and I was just, wow, I do live in a beautiful part of the country, and I think, when you live here, you almost become numb to it. But when you come here, you realize how beautiful it is. So we need to be able to attract and retain.
Public safety. Obviously, it was a flashpoint for City Council in the first couple of years of your first mayoral term here. But now it's taken a step back, I would say. It's not as quite as in your face as it seemed to be at one time. But still a good chunk of the population who feels less safe than they did 5, 6, 7, 8 years. 8 years ago. And it seems like polling across the country shows that people feel less safe now than they did 10 years ago. Whether that's perception or reality is a different story, I guess. But my curiosity, how would you approach that in term 2? How would you approach that issue with public safety in mind and residents who feel like their community isn't as safe as it was before?
Yeah, Josh, I think that's important because I think that's what we didn't do. We didn't. We came in as a council, as a majority of council, came in 2020 and started forcing issues. We didn't bring all the stakeholders to the table and have intelligent, agreeable conversations. We our number one stakeholder was our chief of police. We left him out of the loop. And when I took a look at the police department, I think what was important was I asked, what kind of problems do we have? Does our police force really understand what's going on nationally, what's going on locally? When people feel unsafe or people feel threatened, does our police department know that we don't want to be on the national scene? We don't want anybody treated poorly. We want people treated respectfully in the city of Geneva. And having those conversations with Chief Passalacqua, he knew that. That was one of his main focuses with his team, is to make sure, not that he was staying out of the limelight with national politics or national news, was to make sure that his team understood that they're there to serve and protect. And to do that with the best, most ethical policies in place, to be able to make sure that his team knew that if they stepped outside of those boundaries, they were not part of his team. And he had a situation, he dealt with the situation immediately. So I think, taking a look at what we did in 2020, it was not the right thing to do. We destroyed morale. We had people leaving left and right. We didn't bring the stakeholders to the table and really have those honest conversations on who are we now, who do we want to be, how do we want to make sure that we protect everybody in the right manner. And there are challenges out there. You say that the police should always do things in a certain manner and be very respectful and protective, but I can tell you that I've seen instances where the police get put in situations where that's not an opportunity for them. They have to take different measures, and there's different escalations, and they understand how to deal with that, and deal with that as most respectfully as possible. Wouldn't it be nice if we all just got along and respected each other? Then we'd have a much better society. And I wish for that often, because I think if we just took a look in the city of Geneva and then take a look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, we don't have it bad. We don't have bombs and people getting killed and kidnapped, and we're very fortunate to be in the United States. We're very fortunate to be in the city of Geneva. So put things into perspective. We have great opportunities to develop a great relationship. I get a little confused with what happened for the first 2 years with a 5 majority vote and how they were pushing, but yet on certain platforms and certain candidates' mantras, they almost did a 180. Now they're aligned with the police department. They're almost kind of masking the fact that what went on. Look at the voting records. I think that's important. I stand strong with my voting records, and I stand strong with my efforts to be able to move forward, to work together and have those tough conversations and make sure that people understand the expectations and make sure that they abide by those expectations. I'm not switching gears, and I think some other people are switching gears right now.
Morale, do you feel like morale with public safety in the city is in a better place now than it was 2 years ago? And how much further do you think it has to go before it does reach that sort of peak of where you would like to see it?
Yeah, I think morale is definitely better. I've heard that from employees and staff members, definitely. It's got a long ways to go, though. A motivated employee is a great employee that gets a lot done. It's a lot more efficient. And we don't have a lot of motivated employees. We have people that question what the next step is going to be, especially right now. During the election season, there's people that are very nervous that if the election season goes into a different path and we go back into that same format that we were in 2020, that we're going to have a lot of people, there's going to be an exodus in many ways. And I think that's some of the challenges as the voters go out and vote. There's people that are going to take sides. And, I would never argue with anybody. If somebody has a different viewpoint than me, I respectfully agree to disagree, and we move on. But I think as far as the employees and the staff, I think, there's a nervousness there. And until you get past that nervousness, until they get a good feeling of where the next 4 years is going to go as far as city council and staff, there's going to be a lot of hesitancy to have a higher level of morale.
fire and EMS service in the city. There's some folks who feel like maybe it's not as robust as it could be. I suppose that's always going to be the case. More firefighters, more better access to EMS. Where do you think the city falls right now? Is there room for improvement, or do you think the city's in a good place now where they can sort of coast through the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Can never coast, Josh. You always got to be looking ahead because we're always having new challenges out there. And I think the fire department and EMS, I compliment Chief Del Parada. He's done a great job at setting expectations. There's a lot of training going on. Whatever he asked for, we put into perspective. He doesn't get everything he asked for. I know recently he's trying to get some access to be able to respond to situations on the lake because sometimes that response takes a little bit too long. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for improvement. We talk about being a lakefront community. We talk about being a tourist community. We talk about a marina. I think that's in our future, but we can't put it in the budget right now because it's a little challenging. But I do compliment him in his forward thinking and working with the 3 fire departments. And this is Fire Prevention Week, and tonight at 6:30 we're going to have a fire department memorial service, and we're going to do an inspection of the team. I compliment them and I support them. The fire department also does a lot of EMS training, so there's a lot of cross training between firefighters and EMSing, which I think is really important to be able to leverage. A lot of times when the 911 call comes in, it's usually fire and police that show up even before an ambulance gets there, and they can make a big difference on that scene when they show up. So I think we're in good shape, but I think we have to keep looking forward and keep looking for improvement.
And my last question for you, elevator pitch time. What's the message you want to leave with folks heading into Election Day? What is your pitch to voters?
So my pitch to voters is less of a pitch. It's more of an eye-opener to make sure that the voters out there pay attention to the candidates that are running. You got 18 candidates out there, and you really need to know who the 9 are that you want to put on this council. And as much as you might see platforms, as much as you might see flyers and advertisement and social media and all the promises people might be making, there's no magic wand to reduce taxes. There's no magic wand to have a peaceful council because you're not even sure what the makeup's going to be, or a productive council. So you really got to do your homework and talk less about the platform issues, less about the advertising, and talk more about voting records. If you've got people running on a platform, you got people that are running that are incumbents, people have been on council before, take a good look at their voting records. Take a good look at what they stood for, because I think that's important, because I don't expect anybody to be a horse of a different color and change. I mean, I am who I am. I've been doing this for 21 years. I think I'm pretty predictable when I sit on council and I make decisions and I stand for certain situations. So I'm asking the voting population out there to do their homework and to really learn who the candidates are, to take a look at voting records, because I think that's extremely important.
Steve, appreciate the time. Thanks so much for taking it.
Thank you very much, Josh. I always look forward to it.
That'll do it for this edition of FLX Today. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this one, check out the show on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the FingerLakes1.com YouTube channel. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.